Kevin Hoare, who is guilty of false opinion and continues to be guilty of false opinion. And I'm here with Sunny Danforth, who's probably equally guilty of false opinion. But, we haven't been indicted yet. So I guess we'll just count our blessings for now, Sunny.
Yes, I'm definitely guilty of false opinion. It's amazing that they are criminalizing free speech in our country. This is absolutely against our First Amendment right. And yeah, in fact, I've been accused, when we claimed the false flag on January 6th, said, oh no, that was not a false flag. Well, yeah, you know what? By golly, it came true. It was. So
Yeah.
we do have a lot to talk
There's
about.
some evidence of that, right? So that just emerged, which I think we've known all along that we heard it from people who were there, right?
Yeah.
Very suspicious. So
definitely.
Well, first up, of course, is we've got the Trump latest, which is yesterday. They arraigned him in D.C. He had to show up, which they could have not made him, but they made him, and then they usually do the regular thing. And it's on these charges we were just referring to, which is claiming basically that he didn't really believe that he had won the 2020 election, that he didn't really believe that there was fraud, but that in fact he somehow, through some form of mind reading, they have decided that Donald Trump really didn't mean it, and he was perpetrating fraud on the American people, and all of these charges that they came up with, fraud against rights and all this kind of garbage, which is probably going to run its course and take a long time to play out, which is what they wanted it to do during the election. I don't think it's going to survive when it gets to the higher courts. They're going to throw it out on a pretty solid First Amendment basis. But I do think there is an opportunity here. One of the stories I saw just before we started with the show is that Trump's legal team plans to put the 2020 election on trial, which I think this could backfire fabulously on the Democrats, because we have not had a trial that actually found facts and assessed whether there was a basis for potential what Jack Smith called outcome determinant fraud, which Donald Trump obviously has and still all along believed that the 2020 election outcome was false, right? And that, in fact, it's very likely that he prevailed in the swing states that they claimed Joe Biden won by, 11 or 10,000 votes or 20,000 votes, depending on the state. And somebody's saying that, like Bill Barr saying that Donald Trump knew he had lost, when is like saying Donald Trump knew he really didn't mean it when he said, let's make America great again. It's that dumb, because that's how many times he said it, and he's never wavered from that.
No, he did. He wavered. And I was listening to some commentary today. I had a little opportunity to listening to some commentary today that someone said, wait a minute. He said, he had asked Pence to please hold this for 10 days so that these elections could be, so the secretaries of state weigh in and look into what's going on. There's a lot of false narrative being pushed right now to trash Trump. And I think when the truth comes out, it's going to be, as this goes to court and moves through the courts, there's going to be a lot of truth, and a lot of people are going to be brought up there. A lot of people are going to end up with egg on their face or worse, as has happened already. Everything that Trump has been accused of, it has all come to the realization that it's all been lies. It's all been lies.
Russia, right?
Right. And this lawfare that is happening is just breaking down justice system And now to accuse somebody of, what your opinion or your thought you're guilty of. I mean, this is just crazy.
Yeah, I think that what's emerging is potentially an opportunity to demonstrate not only was this authentically President Trump's opinion, which they tried to claim in these charges it was not. So therefore, they're saying he engaged in false opinion, which is nonsense. You
Yeah.
can't. It's like saying if you and I see, you know how you've heard that old saying that you're entitled to your opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts.
Right.
Well, it also works in reverse. Even if you aren't entitled to your own facts, you are always entitled to your own opinion, and that's something that somebody can't go and claim is lying because you simply have an opinion that differs from others. And I think what we're going to find is that there was more than a valid basis for him to believe what he believed at the time, which is what they're actually trying to indict him for, and that he still believes it, and that many of us also do. And I
Yes.
saw some polling yesterday saying that somewhere around 65 or 70% of Republicans actually still believe that Joe Biden never got 81 million votes, and count me in that group. He didn't.
You can count me in that group too. In fact, there's a little, I'm having a little back and forth with somebody on social media, saying that actually it was overwhelming. People that never turned out to vote, Latinos turned out to vote for Biden. More people that never used to vote turned out for Biden. And I'm thinking, did they really? Did they really? Because you know what? I don't believe that narrative for 1 minute. For Basement Joe, he couldn't get people to even show up to a rally. Remember you can picture in your mind his
The horns
circles,
of the
the
cars,
little circles, and there's a dozen people all 6 feet away. No. And yet he's never had the momentum. He's never had the support truly of the American people. And the facts one day will come out and prove that.
Well, and I think traveling in parallel is that other case that we're going to talk about here of what's happening with Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, because there's the evidence already.
Yeah.
The evidence is in that they stole the election by defrauding the American people. Talk about willfully defrauding the American people, lying about the existence of that and the veracity of that laptop and the fact that it had information on it that suggested that Joe Biden was engaged in this fraudulent activity. So, this is going to play out. We have to pray that it plays out in a way that influences the election in the right direction. But you know who agrees with us about the election integrity issues just prior to January 6th? There's a person who I don't think is the same person anymore because of what he said Wednesday. But Vice President Mike Pence on January 4th, 2021, was speaking to a group of supporters in public, trying to help the two U.S. Senate candidates that were in a runoff in Georgia, Senators Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue, get elected. They did not succeed; they lost. But he was giving this speech in public, and here's what he said, because this is very important. He said, "I know we all got doubts about the election. I share the concern of millions of Americans about voting irregularities. I promise you, this Wednesday, January 6th, we'll have our day in Congress. We'll hear the objections. We'll hear the evidence." He's implying that actually there's going to be a reason to take action on what's heard. So just on Wednesday, Mike Pence was the one who came out and said something quite the opposite. That he said the president was putting himself above the Constitution, that he should never become president again, and it was his response to these so-called fraud allegations. So which Mike Pence are we to believe? And I actually do believe that the Mike Pence who's now running for president and not doing too well. Can't raise money.
No.
Doesn't really have the support. That this is a different Mike Pence, and one that I'm having a hard time reconciling with the Mike Pence that we heard from on January 4th, which, if you talk about presence of mind and who's telling the truth,
Right.
who's telling the truth now? Donald Trump never changed his point of view from January 4th through today.
He never did, and this is the thing about Trump. He has been steadfast in all of this. He has been steadfast, and many people have been steadfast. And I think some that have thought there was never an issue, then they wake up and go, wow, you know what? With all of the things that we've seen, there must be an issue. But for Mike Pence to actually go the other way, it makes me wonder, like, what do they have on Pence? Right? What would make a person go in reverse of that? What do they have on Pence that he felt so 4th to January 6th to his tune?
Yeah, and I actually don't even think that this indictment is solely about Trump, because if you look at it, they're criminalizing political opposition. If they can do that, then what does it matter what we say about any other issues? Bidenomics. Well, if you can be criminalized for criticizing Bidenomics, just like you can be criminalized for criticizing the handling and perceived fraud of an election, if you can be criminalized for criticizing the handling of January 6th by Nancy Pelosi and the people who actually were responsible for security in that building, then pretty soon it doesn't matter what you say on any issue. So we have to fight this, and all of us have to stand together on this.
Absolutely.
And if someone wants to say they're a better candidate for president than Donald Trump, they can go ahead and say that. But there shouldn't be a sliver of light difference between all these people that are saying they want to represent Republicans in 2024. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, because I'll tell you, we've got to stand up for our constitutional right. And it's okay that we all have differing opinions. We don't have to believe the same. We don't have to think the same. This is the individualism of human beings. But our constitutional right here in America is we have our intellectual properties that we have, what we think. It's okay. Yeah, you can slander people. You get trouble for that too. You can get sued for that. But to say that my opinion is illegal, that I could be arrested for what I'm saying today on this program with you, is BS. Not in America.
Yeah, and that's why this issue rises to the top. A weaponized justice system that's being used to manipulate a political process is equally as awful, because that's the whole goal here, is we don't have a justice system where the Democrats are perfectly willing to destroy it in order to produce a political outcome they desire. Now, Bill Barr, who at one time I had a greater degree of respect for because of how he handled the Mueller probe and really kind of put that to bed, and frankly was very, very adept at explaining this to Congress and so on. He's gone off the rails now. And the guy who's hammering him is a guy who I think doesn't support any Republicans, but he actually believes in the Constitution and the rights and freedoms enshrined in it and the system of governance. And that's Alan Dershowitz. And he hammered Bill Barr. He said that Bill Barr is, quote, dead wrong, unquote, on the Trump indictment. And this is where he's the one who I first heard explain this false opinion concept. I mean, this is a guy who teaches this at Harvard, and he knows what he's talking about. And he's been practicing this for 60 years, and even said that, does this mean that when I, in 2000, stated unequivocally that I felt that Al Gore won that election, and that, and he was in fact somebody who represented voters in Palm Beach County, Florida, who said were victimized by a ballot misprint. And therefore he believes that, in fact, their will had been reflected then that very narrow victory for George W. Bush would have been a victory for Al Gore. Um, should he be indicted and imprisoned for that? And he said, this is how the law works. This is why we're what Victor David Hanson calls it, a legal symmetry. We need to have it where it's applied equally to all Americans, and we don't have that now. And the guy who's acknowledging that, of course, is Alan Dershowitz, a Democrat who's never voted for any of these Republicans, but he reveres the Constitution. And I fear that maybe some people, too many people in this country, no longer think the Constitution is the law, but however they feel, however the fake news has successfully gotten them to believe it. And by the way, another thing that I'm going to make sure we post here is Mark Levin's shredding of this indictment. He's so good at it. He is like a prosecutor that takes something that Democrats say or something that the deep state and all these guys say, and he just eviscerates it piece by piece. And one of his big point is that Donald Trump has not been brought up on, and he listed these different things in U.S. code, the law, the statutes that he could have been charged with if Jack Smith really meant what he is saying, such as incitement to riot and insurrection that we keep hearing insurrection over. None of this. He hasn't been charged with any of these things, and so he goes through and says, if what Jack Smith says is true, why isn't he being charged with these things? And the answer is because those things actually didn't happen, and Donald Trump didn't do them. So they've created phony charges, and even worse. Now we know that January 6th, it's increasingly becoming very apparent. The fraud was perpetrated by Nancy Pelosi and the people that were involved with deciding whether or not we were going to have proper security and that the Capitol Police would be allowed to do their jobs that day. And we still haven't had hearings on that. I want to know where those hearings are, but here's the latest piece of evidence. Tucker Carlson interviewed the former Capitol Police chief, who was the police chief on January 6th.
Yeah.
And that interview was set to air on the Monday after Tucker Carlson was fired at Fox News. Now tell me, was that a coincidence or what? I'm done with coincidences, by the way. I don't believe in them anymore.
No, I don't either. No, I don't either.
And here's what this guy said. This is Mr. Sund, he was the former U.S. Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund, and he said that in fact he believes there's an elaborate cover-up of what actually did take place with the people who were handing their orders to him. And who would know that better than the person who was actually supposed to protect the Capitol, but had to follow the orders of the Speaker of the House? And he says, quote, everything appears to be a cover-up, unquote. He said, and he has written a book called Courage Under Fire, which would have gotten a lot of attention, by the way, had that interview by Tucker Carlson aired. And I guess what's happened is some of the interview has now leaked out. But Mr. Sund partly blamed Ms. Pelosi and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, White Rage Milley, for failing to provide him and his officers with intelligence that suggested problems on Capitol Hill January 6th and the potential situation of it spiraling out of control. He said, like I said, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but when you look at the information and the intelligence they had, the military had, it's all watered down. Yeah. I'm not getting intelligence. I'm denied any support for the National Guard in advance, and I'm denied National Guard support while we were under attack for 71 minutes. That wasn't Donald Trump denying that. That was Nancy Pelosi and White Rage Milley, the guy who, by the way, called the Chinese to tell them we were going to do a military exercise because he did this without talking to the president, the commander at the time, Donald Trump. This guy should be brought up on treason. 100%. You know what happens when you're convicted of treason.
You know, and I don't know, to go along with this, I don't know if you have seen some of the videos that have come out from January 6th. And there's one where there were several of the Capitol Police, and this one guy he starts cussing and he goes, "We were set up. We were set up." And it's because they weren't told ahead of time. And as we now know, there were operatives that were in the crowd,
Yeah,
Ray Epps, you can say, and others. And this is why they don't want to release all of the video inside showing everything that was going on inside. This is absolutely a cover up. This whole thing, and by bringing this out. So let me back up a minute. Kevin, I don't believe in the coincidences either. There is too much that the mainstream media is willing to bury to just help destroy our country.
Yeah.
For others to be in power, and that are in the destruction and the dismantling of our nation through our legal system. And so going back to January 6th, though, I'm glad that he spoke out. I'm glad Tucker did the interview. It's got to come out. His book has got to come out, and the truth has to come out. And the Republicans have got to do more to bring all of this out. I know there's a lot of investigations going on and all, but it's like throw the doors open and bring it, but there is only so much time, and some say the wheels of justice turn really slow. Well, let me tell you, it needs to get into high gear, because I agree with you. This is treasonous what is happening in our country. What Nancy Pelosi and the chief of staff there to not pass on that we need to have security. Donald Trump, I believe it was 3 times, he said, let's bring in the National Guard. Would you like
he offered 10 or 15,000 troops. There's a document that Kash Patel, who was the assistant to the Secretary of Defense at the time, has testified under oath that this document was legitimate. It was provided to Nancy Pelosi. It offered 10 or 15,000 federal troops in order to, and that it cited that there was intelligence that suggested over a month ahead of time that some people could be plotting some mischief at that time. And yet you got guys like Christopher Wray. And so I think the other thing Congress has to do is hold some of these people accountable. If it involves impeaching them, I say do it, because Christopher Wray is saying, we did not, to my knowledge at least, have prior knowledge of an attempt at a violent overthrow or breach of the Capitol building itself, which is garbage, because it's all now known that a month ahead of time they had just such information, and they certainly had it a few days ahead of time when Donald Trump offered the troops. And Mark Milley knew it, right?
Right.
So he said, we were concerned about and put out a number of products, intelligence products, to partners and others, warning of the potential for violence more generally on that day. And so, but, he's being scrutinized now because he is claiming that, not only, he won't say if or how many FBI agents are amongst the crowd. He claims there weren't any instigators. So he's still claiming that, but he won't confirm any specific facts to that effect. And then he just offers this ad hominem defense of the people in the FBI, when in fact it's got to be someone like him that had the information. And where's his investigation? Where's the FBI investigation now of this stuff? Where is
it? Absolutely. A lot of things going on that, in my opinion, are treasonous. I'm not a lawyer, but you know what? When you read what treason is, and the people that have in a position that could stop things like this from happening, and that are not, they're allowing it to happen. They're allowing illegal things going on to the destruction of our nation. That is treason, and
speaking of treason, by the way, the basis for impeaching a president Article 2, Section 4, the president and vice president and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, and or high crimes and misdemeanors. And prominent in that statement is the word bribery. Tucker Carlson has just done part 2 of his interview with Devin Archer, who is the guy who basically is spilling all the beans and connecting Joe Biden to the multiple 20 plus calls and numerous in-person meetings that took place with the very people who sent money to Hunter and to the big guy or dad, who was the prize on these conference calls that you got to hear his voice and say, well, in fact, Hunter is able to influence things because he got his dad on the phone for us, where they talked about the weather, by the way.
Yeah, right. Now talk about quid pro quo and pay to play. This bribery, quite frankly. You know, even one of them, the fellow said he was not happy at all to that he had to pay $5 million here and $5 million there to get what he wanted. Yeah. You know, and then you have Biden in his own words going, oh yeah, I picked up the phone and said, hey, if you don't fire that prosecutor, I'm going to withhold the $1 billion from you. And hey, lo and behold, you know, an hour later, it's 6 hours before he left the country. I mean, this is in his own words.
And that FBI 1023 document, which assessed reported on and assessed the veracity as believable of the FBI source that they were working with, they worked with for 10 years. That document was suppressed until this very year. And that
unbelievable.
And that document in it said that this source was contacted by the guy at Burisma who wanted some advice. He wanted some advice, and the guy, he thought, well, you should focus on trying to defend yourself and spend money on a good lawyer there in Ukraine. He said, oh, I've already spent good money. And that's when he told the guy, I sent $5 million to Hunter and $5 million to his dad to make this investigator in Ukraine go away. That's exactly what he did. And Joe Biden admitted it in front of God and the world. So this is real. And then
out of his own mouth. I mean, you can't deny that.
You can't. And so now what we've got is Democrats obfuscating the fake news media, obfuscating, claiming that this money didn't go from this person and end up with Hunter but the House Oversight Committee is hammering these guys because they have all of the information now. And in fact, the House Oversight Committee posted that Glenn Kessler, who's a journalist at the Washington Post, who said that this information, that 3.5 million payment didn't actually go to Hunter Biden or was unrelated. House Oversight Committee responded and spelled out chapter and verse exactly how it did it. So the news media is probably even worse than the Bidens because the as Trump calls them, the lying fake news is an enemy of the people. It is, because this is what they're doing. And Byron Donalds, a representative from Florida, said that he really does, and I've been hearing this from several others, believe that an impeachment inquiry, which will empower them to go and get all this information without anybody able to block it.
That's what needs to happen.
It needs to happen. And he says it looks very likely. And Judiciary Committee Republicans, that's Jim Jordan's committee, says that they are demanding a hearing with Attorney General Garland and U.S. Attorney Weiss, who is the U.S. Attorney in charge of the Hunter Biden case. And they're going to ask him some questions. And their public statements and testimony under oath so far does not comport with one another. So one of them's lying. And,
yeah, definitely.
And now they're going to have to go and be. And I actually think that this should, if there's any evidence that Garland was impeding this investigation or lying about what he was doing with regard to it, boom, it's time for him to be impeached and removed and put on trial. This all can be done. And this is probably more important than really anything else that's going on.
It is. This is the most important thing that affects our entire. This is the
It's the moment of truth, right?
Pardon?
It's the moment of truth for our nation.
Well, it is the moment of truth. And I want to see our nation as you do too, I'm sure. We want it to survive. We want it to thrive. And you look at what's going on today versus what was going on when Trump was in office, and how our economy is, and just overall everything. It was a lot better. And yet you watch what's going on. Here we have during everything, the turmoil that there is, and you've got sleepy Joe Biden on the beach, kicking back, not paying attention. He could give a rip, in my opinion. I don't think he cares.
Yeah.
I don't.
I think beached whales, that is what he looked like, care more about the U.S. economy than he does. And Bidenomics is a complete joke. Nobody believes it. Everybody that has anything functioning in their head above the brainstem, those people, they all know that they'd rather have 2019 Trumponomics than 2023 Bidenomics any day of the week and twice on Sunday. And we got to get back to that, because all these other issues depend on us getting to the truth on these core issues. Now,
it is. And then the core issues is the foundation of America and the freedoms that we have. And we have to fight for it and say BS when it is people are spouting things that are not true, and supporting those that are. One thing that I love is every time they indict Trump, his support just gets more. Yeah. More and more people are waking up to the two-tier justice system that is quite apparent.
Yeah.
If they're paying attention and looking at some alternative news, and that are getting woke up to that reality. It's so sad that we have this in our nation, but it is really, really coming to a head and brought to. It's so easy to see. It's so easy to see these days. There's just no denying the two-tier justice system in America.
Yeah, and that's actually turning out to be our biggest problem, because we don't get to debate issues reasonably otherwise. And by the way, we also have, as conservatives, we have to combat the fake news media, which does seem to dominate things. And the fake news media came out with an interesting report. This is NPR, so we're paying for, Oregon Public Broadcasting, National Public Radio. Yeah. And here's the report. It says 3/4 of Republicans prioritize the economy over climate change. Oh my God. No, we can't have that. The economy? No, right. It doesn't matter. And they go on and talk about how hot it is. And they say the latest heat wave is fueled by human-caused climate change from burning fossil fuels. But despite the settled science, the overwhelming evidence, and billions of dollars in increases for disaster preparation and recovery, that climate change is costing our country, those terrible Republicans have grown more skeptical of the need to prioritize fixing it, which I don't remember any of the Democrats ever actually promising to fix it, or even to say that anything that they are doing is changing it or altering what they say is human-caused global warming at all. Because whenever you ask them, well, how much will it change world temperatures if we do X, Y, and Z? And it's like, well, we'll find out. We just have to do everything we can to destroy the economy in order to, fuel this giant, what I believe is turning out to be a horrifically exaggerated fraud that is beginning to concern people, not just about the economy, but I think about energy, because we all know that without energy, not only do you not have an economy, you don't have a civilization as we know it, unless you want to camp out. And we've got people doing that in Portland, but they're doing fentanyl too. This is actually existential for our society. And yet all of these guys are talking about how they have to dramatically alter and destroy our energy infrastructure and our economy in order to serve this issue, which they won't promise actually how much they're going to solve it and when. They can't. And
no. And every summer, Kevin, for several years, oh my gosh, everything's heating up. Well, you know what? It is summer.
Yeah,
We
that's
have summer, we have winter, right? And we have fires and we don't have fires. And it's none of it is climate. This is the facts of the globe, the world, quite frankly. And to think that we can do something. First of all, carbon is the building block of life.
and
So we
carbon
have to
dioxide
have,
plants breathe it, right?
right? We have to have carbon. That is a misnomer. Then you have a volcano spew, there the ash and the everything from the center of the world up into the atmosphere that negates any changes that we have ever done of reducing carbon. And it is truly, in my opinion, a financial shell game enriching nations, primarily China, since where wind turbines come from, that's where solar panels come from, that's where the trace minerals come from to build these things. And also, in my opinion, it's more destructive on our environment building and mining those trace minerals than it is going after some oil.
Yeah.
I really, really believe that. We're never, in my opinion, we will never have a zero net carbon-free society. We're always going to have fossil fuels around. We have coal around, and we have done so much. I can't speak for other nations because in India and China, they're huge polluters. But in our nation, we've done a lot to clean up what comes out of a car and what comes out of a truck. That we've got cleaner air and cleaner water, and those things are good. But when you continue to change it, that is to the detriment of the industry and the detriment of a nation, that it's going to break companies to go out of business. You've just gone too far.
Yeah, and I think that all of these global warming, climate alarmists, they've predicted 0 out of the last 10 climate catastrophes. When they predict over and over that the polar ice cap's going to melt and that the oceans are going to rise. And what's interesting is they're still predicting this stuff. It's just that when they get it wrong over and over and over, no one ever holds them accountable for it. So here's the prediction. This is what the OPB story shows, is that failing to curb future emissions could cause an additional 1.5 to 5 feet of rise for a total of 3.5 to 7 feet by the end of this century. And then they took a pot shot at Trump and said Trump has lied, called climate change a hoax, and implied it would only, quote, may affect us in 300 years, unquote, and only see a sea level rise of 1/8 of an inch. I'm going with Trump on this, because whenever they predict these things in the last 30 years, they've been wrong every time, and they never explain it. And then here's the worst part. This survey that they cite in this article says that younger Americans, however, are the most likely of any age bracket to say climate change is affecting their community. 72% represent a major threat, 64%, and should take priority over the economy, 59%. So says a large group of people that don't have to pay for anything yet,
Right.
aren't trying to raise families, don't know what it's like to have extremely expensive energy or non-existent energy. And they've literally been going through these indoctrination factories in our school system, telling them that this is true with no competing information, no opportunity to express skepticism or to question it or to look at any contrary information. In other words, a huge chunk of people have been propagandized and gave the survey result OPB wanted to cite. They're not the purveyors of wisdom, even though the left likes to say the young are the wise. Not really.
No. And Kevin, in our lifetime, yours and mine, it has gone from science is to question everything, right? It's the theory. If you can replicate a scientist research, you can replicate it. Now it becomes fact, right?
Yeah.
But now it is, oh no, don't question science. Well, you know what? Science, if you're not questioning it. And
Yeah,
there
and if
have
you're
been a
predicting the
lot
world's
of
going to end in 5 years, I think the burden is on you to prove that.
exactly. I'll tell you, I was reading, I don't know if you COVID with an attorney out of Florida is Jeff Childers, and it's on Substack, and he wrote a great, I read it the other day, and it had to do with something that nobody has talked about. You haven't seen it anywhere in the news. I realized it when it happened because I spent quite a bit of time, about 2 years roughly, well, about a year and a half in the country of Tonga. And Tonga has an area in the Hapai group. It's a very small, low-lying area of islands. And there was a underwater volcano. It was the largest eruption of our time, but it was under the sea. So nobody really, they didn't talk about it. But what that volcano did, it spewed so much vapor into our atmosphere that it definitely, it was just a fascinating article that he had. That region in the Hapai group of it's Ha'apai. It might sound like I'm hiccuping in there, but it is Ha'apai. And there is magma there. When we were sailing on our boat in that region, on the charts, it shows you that there is a huge deviation of what your compass is going to show because there's so much magma activity land. You're not going to run aground, but relatively shallow ground. It's a sea hump that comes up. And there's been a lot of volcanic activity. So there has been, which is why right now at this moment, why we are having our ocean is vents in this region are hot enough to melt lead. Okay.
Wow.
But that is not climate change. That is
Yeah.
from our globe, our world, and what is happening with tectonic plates and the activity, whether it be up above the ocean or underneath. There's a lot going on that isn't talked about a lot.
Isn't
So
it
I just
convenient?
wanted to
Isn't
throw
it
that out.
convenient how it's
Yeah,
always humans causing all of this?
right.
And yet,
Not nature.
apparently, volcanoes and natural activity that we have no control over, and the sun. You know, the sun actually has something to do with heat on Earth. That's something I got in science very early on,
Yes.
and I've stayed with that. And I think they don't understand the sun fully. So when they race to go and blame everything on humans, I think there's the fraud. They
It
have
is.
defrauded people and told them, don't buy into any of these other explanations. Only buy into the one that seems to have some political import and gives us more control over your lives. Because all these other ones, they don't help us. And that's
And you
science.
can't control the volcanoes. You see, they're trying to control us. You can't control Mother Nature. Mother Nature is so powerful. And it, like I said, it's a financial shell game to enrich nations, costing us, you, me, and other Americans a
Trillions.
lot of money.
Yep, absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
there's I think another story that we wanted to touch upon here today. It was kind of big news. Our friend, Mr. Wrong Speaker David Darnell, spotted it yesterday before it
Yes.
hit the big time. And sure enough, this morning, you're seeing it on the major news networks that actually report stuff like this, which is like Newsmax actually featured it this morning.
Oh,
And it,
wow. I didn't see that.
yeah, they featured it this morning and had a debate, a discussion about it. Said a woman, this is the libs of TikTok, by the way, that got this story out there and got it national attention. A woman receiving cancer treatment at OHSU here in Oregon, in Portland, Oregon Health Sciences University, was told she can no longer be a patient at the clinic after she sent a message criticizing a trans flag that was hanging prominently at the entrance of that clinic. She also told Libs of TikTok that they requested that she go for re-education, and she refused. And that resulted in her being expelled from the clinic and refused treatment, which is chemotherapy. And this is a deeply troubling story. This is a bunch of sort of snowflake gender activists within OHSU that have decided that they consider that too disrespectful from a patient to offer life-saving medical treatment to that patient. And then of course there was the information was circulated amongst the staff. Apparently one of the things that she also spoke out on in a message that she shared was, where's the flag for women? Or how about for children? And she said, I have been threatened on Twitter by trans activists as a result of the story with rape and death. So it is daunting to go for medical treatment with a banner proclaiming that what I am, an adult human female, calling myself now, is hateful, according to OHSU. A woman is a mere opt-in category for any gender non-conforming male, and reality itself, this negates women completely. I've said this many times. I'm sure that you have a similar thought on this. It's women that are being canceled. And she's being not only canceled in terms of her opinion, she's being canceled in terms of being allowed to be alive.
Yes, she is. And she posted the letter that she got, or she got from OHSU. And it goes even further. It says, please note that you are also now dismissed from all OHSU family medicine clinics, including immediate care. This is unconscionable. What about the oath of being a doctor to do no harm?
Yeah. Apparently the trans flag oath is more important,
This is, I can't even believe that this is happening, quite frankly, but yet I can, because the same type of thing they were threatening over the jab. If you didn't get the jab, should we allow you to go to your doctor? Go get, and she has every right to speak her mind and ask a question. Where is the flag for women and for children? So she's getting canceled from critical cancer treatment for saying her opinion.
Yeah, and there are a bunch of OHSU affiliated clinics all over the state. So they're basically saying you're a persona non grata as far as healthcare is concerned. I think the lawsuit's going to be absolutely gigantic against OHSU, which unfortunately, as it should be, unfortunately, they're largely publicly funded. So they're going to just hand the bill for their stance on canceling her and frankly trying to send her to her death. They are going to hand the bill to the taxpayers of Oregon. And this is, by the way, let's remind everyone, the same Oregon Health Science University that has a gender clinic, whose chief professor of urology and plastic surgery, Dr. Blair Peters, did a video basically explaining in some detail how the surgeries work and that they do them to minors and essentially castrate them, create genitalia out of different parts of the body. And he even explains that they're going to experience lifelong health challenges, including just simply having no nerve ending sensitivity, urinary issues. He explains all this. This has actually now been this video has been put in the congressional record in Congress, because Democrats said we didn't know anything about it. It's like, well, here's the dude explaining it. And there's a really good
The
article.
Democrats got up and walked out. They did not want to see this video. They closed the session in order to view it, and then they wouldn't come back in when it was in before the session. But you know, as a woman, I don't want to be canceled. I am a woman. And a man pretending to be a woman, having hormone therapy. You know what? If you want to say you're one, go say you're one. I could care less. And if you want to subject yourself to surgeries and taking drugs, hormone blocking therapies as an adult, I don't care. That's your life. But I am a woman, and women needs women's sports, and children do not have the capability, the maturity, the brain development to make this decision. And parents need to step up and be parents to their children. They are called minors, and why a parent has responsibility for them to the minimum age of 18 years old. Their brain development up until about 25, you know, you go through different things. I was a tomboy as a kid. And my mom never said, "Oh, Sonny, maybe you should have transgender surgery," because you know what? I'm a woman today. I'm still a woman. I'm still a tomboy too. You know what? I like to play baseball. I like to go hunting, and I like to go hiking and fishing. Those are not gender specific activities. Playing with trucks doesn't mean, you know what? I learned how to work on mechanics. I was fixing both of my brothers who are older than me. But that's just things that interest me. Now, but it doesn't mean that I'm a boy. It doesn't mean I wanted to be a boy. It means that those are things that just interested me. And as a woman today, you know, I have a heck of a lot of life skills in many, many areas, and it doesn't make me less of a person.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I'm hearing from gay men that they are kind of infuriated, like Rick Grinnell, who was the ambassador to Germany under Trump, as well as an interim
advisor, senior advisor,
national security advisor, and he said that what he's noticing is that they're actually going to gay boys and telling them that they're actually girls, and that they have to get these surgeries. And here's one story. There's two stories that I want to mention from that have been in Fox News within the past week. So an insider to a hospital, Maine Health, so I guess that's in the state of Maine, is warning that trans kids on hormones are frequenting the emergency room at their hospital for harming themselves in what he describes as a cry for help, and calls the chemical sex changes for kids cruel. This is beginning to emerge as they're actually causing problems. And as you said about the Hippocratic Oath, it says do no harm, right?
Yes.
Well, this is actually harming kids and creating problems. And we keep hearing how it's saving their lives, but it clearly, this insider report has to be looked at. And you know who else is looking at this? This is the other Fox News report that I saw as of this morning. Potential game changer. American Academy of Pediatrics reviewing support of youth gender treatments. They've long backed these gender treatments for minors, and they're taking a look at it, and they may change their 2018 policy that supported it, which can only be because they're starting to see this type of information emerge, and that it's catastrophic for youth.
And it is catastrophic. And you know, it's either was the Netherlands or Sweden. I wasn't sure. Just over in Norway, one of their
Nordic countries.
Yes, they have stopped doing this type of therapy on children because they saw the repercussions of what was happening. This is a crime, trying to second guess nature on children. If a person decides what they want to do, like Kris Jenner, you know what? Used to be a sports guy, used to be a man and a sportsman, but as an adult, he said, you know what? I feel like I'm a woman, and he's changed. not all of his gender, only the top portion, had top surgery, but no bottom surgery,
Right.
and lives his life as a woman today. You know what? If that's what you want to do, go do it. But you leave the children alone.
Well, and you just mentioned that they said one of the reasons why the American Association of Pediatrics is reconsidering the support for this is how several European countries have modified their policies after analyzing the available research. So there's research to this effect, not just hearsay or insider reports. And the National Health Service in England is also looking at this. They are beginning to scale these services back, and they said that the AAP will most likely find low quality evidence in favor of pediatric gender care. The policies of Europeans are much more aligned with the evidence than are Americans. So who is ignoring the science now?
Right.
I believe that this is going to be a major, major issue. And it's also going to be an issue, just like all the things we talked about, because if you can engage in wrong speak about an election, or wrong speak about what happened on January 6th, or wrong speak about climate change and whether it can be solved by destroying our economy, or in this case, wrong speak that's politically incorrect about gender surgeries, then people can criminalize you. We can't fix these problems.
No,
we can't fix them. So we have to fight to make sure that we can speak out and speak the truth without repercussions, criminal repercussions.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%.
Well, we covered some really heavy stories here today, but I think they all connected, didn't they?
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. And I think that, we have to bring up, this is one of the reasons I like doing Captive Audience, is because of bringing some awareness to people that maybe things that they haven't seen before, and that they can share easily around to help bring awareness to other people, so that other people can see things. And yes, I do think that they all connected very much.
Yeah, we named it Captive Audience back when we were truly physically captives. But I think we realized that we're in a kind of politically correct prison that many of us they've tried to put us in. And so from the beginning, we've been fighting back against that captivity and expressing our opinions, our perspectives, even when others are telling us you can't, you mustn't, you won't, or else. We're doing it anyway. And we'll keep doing it. And I'm proud to be on the show with you, Suni. And thank you for joining me here today. Engaging in all the wrong speak that we possibly can. That's an Orwellian term, folks, that you should go look up. When the totalitarian state decides that your opinion doesn't fit with what the government's opinion is, then they come after you. But we're going to keep getting after them and speaking this truth. So,
yep. Well, thank you very much, Kevin.
Yes, thank you, Suni, and have a great weekend. And we wish to all of our viewers out there a really fine weekend. Enjoy, the warm weather that actually happens in the summer, and enjoy time with your family and your friends, because that's what really matters the most. But keep sharing this show with everyone you can, because it does matter that they hear these perspectives and hear them from a place like Oregon, where, they're obviously trying to cancel people to the point of death. So
no kidding.
We're not yielding.
Hey, and also I won't be here next week. We've got our county fair happening, and so I'm not going to be available. I'm going to be in our county fair booth and taking care of that. So I know that I appreciate everybody stepping up to help cover our my shifts for Wednesday and Friday. Thank you very much, Kevin.
You bet. But don't hesitate to let people know at your county fair booth about all of our wrong speak and where they can find the Captive Audience, because they may actually be very grateful for that. So,
yep.
So have a great week next week, Suni, and we'll see you the week after. And you'll probably see a lot of me next week. And we'll be back, I think Monday with another episode of the Captive Audience. Have a great night, everybody.
Night.